In a fast-changing world, supply chains have become global and complex, and they are faced with unprecedented levels of disruption and volatility. At the same time, digitalization is creating new opportunities that are fundamentally transforming the way in which supply chains operate and interact. Now, in this dynamic context, who fulfills the role of the supply chain manager and which skill sets they need in order to thrive? I have been a seasoned supply chain management practitioner and coach from the late 70s right through the turn of the century until now. So, having been through many boom and bust cycles, as well as having seen the exponential growth of technological innovation, I must say I am very concerned at the state of our supply chain talent pool and skill sets. I would like to share an experience I had working with a client in supply chain transformation recently. And their biggest challenge was linked to the intelligent and highly qualified professionals who had moved to them from traditional companies. Now, the problem was that he couldn't deprogram those employees. They were programmed for short term thinking and risk avoidance. In other words, they played not to lose, whereas the client wanted them to play to win. Now, because my client was unable to change them, they became a problem, of course, for the teams they led in most cases. So there was no other solution but to part ways. Now, this example illustrates the urgent need for a mindset shift in supply chain. I'm often frustrated at the traditional images of supply chain showing the suppliers on the left and the customers on the right. Now, if I ask students to draw a supply chain, they always start with a factory, a supplier, or even a truck. You see, we are still very focused on the supply, yet in reality, it's all about the demand. Every supply chain starts with the customer's customers. They should be on the left, not the right. Now, I am also concerned of companies that still regard supply chain as a traditional discipline within the organization. In my view, the supply chain is a combination of flows from our customers' customers to our suppliers' suppliers. Those flows span all disciplines. So, supply chain is not about purchasing, production, and distribution, but also about driving sales and managing product ranges and new product introduction. Now, the current transition from the industrial age to the digital age is accompanied by extensive technological disruptions and social upheaval. Traditional companies are disappearing, and new ones with innovative business models are emerging. Until now, we could rely on next year's business looking about the same as last year's. But right now, we don't even know what the next month will bring us. We are entering a completely new world for which our current planning methods, our mindset, and leadership ideas are inadequate. In the digital transformation that many companies are now going through, much of the focus is on new technologies. But the technologies are less important than their mindset, their culture, and strategy. You can essentially fill your company with specialists in data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. But if you don't know what those specialists should be doing, and if those specialists don't know what value they should be creating, you will be left with an organization that is rich in initiatives and poor in results. Now, data is worthless if it can't be used to support the strategy or to contribute to the creation of customer value. In terms of mindset, there should be a shift from the company to the customer and focus on solving the customer's problems rather than simply selling products. Of course, this requires a supply chain that revolves around creating customer value rather than cutting costs. Initially, we thought that companies and products were competing with each other. Then later, we thought that supply chains were competing against each other. But now we know that it's actually business models that are competing. Which customer segments do we serve? And what is the value proposition for those customers? The supply chain has to be designed accordingly. Now, needless to say, new technologies can play a role in that. Now, in addition to a different mindset, companies need different competencies. These competencies include empathy, adaptability, creativity, problem solving skills, curiosity, and collaboration. Now, if we train our people to compete with machines, we train them to lose. We have more technology than ever, but we don't know what to do with it. That requires other skills. And I'm not talking about skills that machines can reproduce, like analyzing data or processing transactions, but I'm talking about skills that allow us to create the right questions. Businesses are executing many projects, but often without a clear idea. For example, how are all the tools they implement going to support decision making and create more customer value? If a project does not contribute to value creation and profitability, it's merely a distraction from the real goal. Now, from the variety of responsibilities that are combined into a supply chain manager's function, it becomes clear that supply chain professionals need to master a vast set of skills in order to successfully fulfill their many and diverse tasks. Now, what are the most important skills and whether they have changed from the past or will change in the future? In these complex and turbulent times, it's more likely to be that it will change in the future. So having a good understanding of the business and of the end-to-end supply chain is considered essential for a supply chain manager. Now, supply chain management is an action-oriented function. It's focused on problem solving, on organizing, on making decisions and implementing them. Skills obviously needed for managing the supply chain. What are they? Relational skills. Now, these include leadership and communication, and they are key for success due to the high level of interactions needed. Not surprisingly, change management skills are also indispensable in the fast changing supply chain environment. Now, in depth, individual functional knowledge areas such as sourcing, manufacturing, warehousing, reverse logistics, etc., tells us that supply chain management has become a truly end-to-end function, where planning and understanding the end-to-end supply chain has become more important than being an expert in the individual functional areas. Multiple technological skills, such as data science skills and understanding of digital technologies, and experimenting, which is closely linked to digital innovations. Now, together with the responsible management and sustainability principles, are important given the increased level of digitalization in supply chains and the urgent need for more sustainable supply chains to mitigate climate change. To sum up, as we anticipated, today's supply chain professional must master a broad set of skills rather than just being an expert in isolated fields of knowledge and technology. They will need a combination of very strong managerial skills, the capability to build relationships, and a sound business and end-to-end supply chain. Alongside the importance of supply chain skills today, this will evolve in the coming 5 years. The supply chain function is becoming even more demanding. The bar was already high, and if will only continue to rise for the supply chain professional of the future. No, the supply chain professional needs to be increasingly tech savvy and aware of the impact of new technologies on the supply chain. Now, awareness and understanding of digital technologies and data science skills are expected to increase the most in importance in the future. What about soft skills? Now, soft skills are among the skills that are expected to increase most in importance. They include openness to learning continuously and change management, given the increasing need for supply chains to constantly adapt to changing business environments. The idea of continuous learning implies that learning new skills, knowledge, and ways of working is ongoing, and we constantly need to adapt to changing markets and emerging technologies. Responsible management and sustainability practices are among the fastest growing skills, which reveals that we are aware of the increasing importance of building more sustainable supply chains. Now, having an end to end understanding of the supply chain, which is already deemed to be very important today, will become even more important in the future. Revealing a supply chain function with an even more integrative supply chain wide responsibility than before. Strategic thinking, innovative thinking, and customer orientation round up the list of the fastest growing skills. Now, in conclusion, all relevant skills will likely become even more important in the future, while new technological competencies will be added to the set of required skills. Now, it is rather unlikely that all of these skills can be found in a single person who would be an extremely rare supply chain superhero. Instead, they could be found in a well balanced, complementary, and multidisciplinary supply chain team. It has become clear that today's skill set will not be sufficient to meet the rising needs of the future, and that organizations of the future will need a wide variety of skills. So, what can they do to bridge the widening gap between the supply chain skills of today and tomorrow? Watch out for the next episode where I will deal with these issues in greater detail. Till then, thank you for watching and take care.